Hello, everybody, again. We're continuing on volunteering in a cultural context. I want to talk about dress code for particularly Native functions such as a powwow. We appreciate modesty in our culture, and so for girls, we really recommend pants or long skirt, closed toe shoes, modest shirt. If you're wearing your hair in a ponytail or something like that, we'd appreciate no feathers and being sure that you aren't wearing your hair in kind of an Indian or what you think is an Indian hairstyle that might look hokey. And so if you have any question about what you're going to wear, I would definitely clear it with your volunteer coordinator for whichever event that you're getting ready to volunteer for. And I realize sometimes we are doing things in very, very hot weather, but particularly at powwows, particularly at any of our ceremonies, or at our Indian churches, think about what grandma would recommend that you wear. Regardless of how hot you are, we really, want you to be covered, so that you don't look like you're being suggestive in any kind of way. And we definitely recommend that you not act in a flirtatious sort of way. Although I have to admit, our culture does a lot of teasing about dating, a lot of teasing about people being cute and all that. And we happen to have a whole lot of cute volunteers. We also have some ugly ones, very cute people on our committee. And so if someone asks you if you're snaggable, if they ask you if you want to take a chance on an Indian blanket, if they try to put a blanket over you and they're underneath the blanket with you, watch out for that, girls in particular. Sometimes the guys too got to watch out for those folks that think they're cute too. We want you to behave in a professional manner whenever we're out there in the public. So we just want you to be sure you're dressing modestly. Same for the guys though. You do not want to be caught with your shirt off, or a grandma's gonna come over and tell you to get your shirt on, won't let you eat any dinner. About even for guys, usually the men are wearing jeans and they're wearing their closed toe boots and their tennis shoes or what have you. And this is all if you're not wearing regalia, if you're not wearing something from your own tribal people. Be sure you're able to educate people about how come your outfit looks different than others. So for instance, I wear a Chickasaw dress and it looks like a European cloth dress back in the pioneer days. And so I have to explain to people about the history of our dress, our collar, the ruffles, all of those types of things. I'm prepared to answer those questions. And so if that's what you're going to do, be sure you kind of cover it with us before you present yourself in public. The other thing is, if you're going to participate in the powwows and you would like to dance in the intertribal dances, which are open to the public, I really want my volunteer females to have a shawl. The men typically dance with the men and the women dance with the women, unless it's a two-step is called. And a two-step is usually a woman's choice. It doesn't always have to be that way. That's your opportunity to go and grab somebody and ask them to dance. Usually people have to pay a fine if they're not willing to dance with you. That's one of the ways that, kind of like a Sadie Hawkins dance, if you call it that. But you still need to wear your shawl into the arena. Even if you're trying to do business for some reason with the drum, which you should never do unless you go through the MC or the powwow committee. But if for some reason you have to enter the grounds or you've been called on the grounds, women need to have their shawl with them. Now, the purpose of the shawl is medicine. Our shawls have been used for centuries for warmth, taking care of babies, but we also have received our shawls in a very sacred way, or made them ourselves, or they've been passed down by families, but they're very meaningful for us. And so wearing them is a sign of respect for the powwow committee, for our drum, for our dancers, for creator. And if you don't own a shawl, it's okay to use a shawl if someone offers one to you, but do not borrow somebody else's shawl without their permission, because again, that is kind of their sacred medicine. And men don't have to wear a shawl, but you'll notice that with most men's regalia, especially in a gourd dance, they wear a blanket around their neck. So they have their own things that they carry with them when they go out into the arena. I would be careful about being over talkative, monopolizing conversations, being sure you're not talking over people, whether they're elders or whether they're children. And then let's talk about children. So children in our culture are considered a very valuable resource. And traditional Native child rearing does not involve spanking, it does not involve shaming, it does not involve scolding. But as the result of many years of boarding school treatment using corporal punishment, a lot of our parenting methods were dissolved and deteriorated as a result of that. But I would like our committee to treat all of the children that we interact with at Santa Fe Days in the Park and at our cultural events. I would like you to treat them as we should traditionally treat children, which is we listen to them. If need be, we help distract them. We treat them with the same respect that we would an adult. We watch out for their safety and their care. And we are careful about shaming and not doing that, with kids. So if I like to have all of our displays be touchable if possible. And I would encourage kids to, at least we need always to have a big old thing of beans that they can play with, seeds, so we can talk about that. But in general, children should be looked at with the same value that we treat elders. I think we talked about the collective, the importance of the group versus the individual, but how that moves into more an extreme version is that when we try to get something accomplished, it is not you're not necessarily going to see one person taking charge, being the boss, and delegating what's going to happen. We usually look for people to volunteer on their own. We expect people, this is kind of our mindset as a culture. We expect if one person is working hard, that the person next to them will be working equally hard, that they will be putting forth the same amount of effort as everyone at the same time without having to be asked. And that's another point in our culture. If you think about that whole non-interference issue, we don't tell people that they need to do this and they have to do this. We may tell children, hey, go help your auntie or go pull that chair out for somebody. But in terms of from adult to adult, people are going to watch you and they're going to watch to see if you are taking initiative on your own, or are you just kind of sitting around having a good time, enjoying yourself, and you're not really pitching in. People notice that, and they won't say anything to you directly, but I may have a whisper in my ear like, how come so-and-so, like they were just sitting around while we were all serving dinner. I don't understand what was going on. So unless you have a physical limitation, and if you do, we need to know about that, because we don't want to push you on past physical limitations. We all have some of those. You just need to be honest with us about it, or honest with me. Volunteering is hard work. It's supposed to be fun work, but the purpose of us handling these events and stuff is to actually do work. So we typically mix socialization with everything that we do, and we can have a whole lot of fun while we're sweating and dragging boxes around and what have you. But we do expect in our culture that everybody is helpful at all times, not just whenever the hour is up that they've finished volunteering. And that may be different than other volunteer jobs that you've had. We try not to misuse power, and by that I mean if you're treating children with the same respect that you treat grown-ups, then be careful what you're asking them to do. Let's don't overwork our kids, but at the same time, let's teach them how to volunteer and how to have a great time doing that. Help them build relationships with one another, because all of these youngsters that are getting to know each other when they follow us from place to place, we hope those will build relationships into adulthood so that they'll carry on our traditions, and then they'll pass on to their kids about how it is to volunteer, how it is to help. If we're eating, remember that elders, veterans, and children always go first. As volunteers, I do not actually count us into the feeding, unless that's specifically we've done that. We are here to feed the people who are our entertainers, our out-of-town guests, any special guests we have, but particularly at Santa Fe Days in the Park, we usually do not budget in for our volunteers to eat, because we feel like those dollars need to go to other people. So keep that in mind if you're volunteering, to pack your own lunch, bring your own water, be prepared for parking costs, be prepared for gas costs, because we don't have that in our budget unless we find some fascinating person on our committee who's going to make big bucks come into our organization. Usually we are running from dollar to dollar, and it's a very hard thing for me to justify spending any of those dollars on our own committee. I personally think that that's the wrong use of money. So when you see a food line, We should be the ones serving, and we should never eat until everybody else has been fed. We clearly know everybody else has been fed, and then we're eating leftovers, and they may be cold, but if you're a traditional Native person, a cold hot dog is just as equal as a hot dog. That's a good joke. Respecting things that are sacred. Many times you won't know what is sacred and what's not sacred in our culture. Watch for whether other people touch things or not is kind of the safe way to do it. So if you see something that's beautiful, keep your hands to yourself. Don't touch it. In particular, never touch someone's tribal dress in any way. You can tell people something is beautiful. Don't over admire it. We have something in our culture in which if somebody likes something and they really seem to love it, we will sometimes give them that item. Be sure as a volunteer you absolutely do not take advantage of that in our culture. With our artists, they may feel like since you're on the committee and you're enjoying looking at their earrings and you're saying you can't afford it, they may feel obligated to give it to you. I don't want to ever feel like my volunteers are taking advantage of our artists or the friendships within the community by asking for things or by hinting around that you're hoping that somebody will give it to you. That's a friendship issue, and a Native person may come to love you and care about you in the way that they want to gift you. And if they are gifting you, please never refuse that gift. But please also understand, did you somehow solicit that by your behavior and unknowingly put that person in an awkward position where they're having to give you something that they were hoping that they were going to be able to sell to help feed their families? Particularly our artists at Santa Fe Days in the Park, many of them have 4 generations living in their home. And although at the event you can't see what struggles that they're having, please know that if they give you a ring and they spent 10 hours on that ring and you just love it and it's gorgeous, but you've known them for 10 minutes, I don't think that an artist is going to feel good about giving that to you, but they're probably going to do it because it's the thing that we do. And so be careful about admiring things too much. Be careful about over complimenting people because of the position that it puts them in. And also that makes us uncomfortable. On some pueblos, we've learned that if somebody is working on a pot that is unfinished and you compliment them, then the pot has to be broken. It can't be used. You're allowed to compliment it once it is finished. That's okay. But before then, you basically have to either tell them the pot is ugly and you don't like it and it's nasty looking with a smile on your face or what have you, or you should not. You just should go, wow, something to that effect where you don't imply that it's too beautiful. At a powwow, entering the circle is an important issue. Powwows run in a clockwise direction and stomp dance is a counterclockwise. And those are the difference between those two traditions. And if you've never seen either one of them, you may not know what I'm talking about. But when you have that first opportunity to volunteer and you're invited into dance, please wait until the head dancers, there's always a head man, head lady dancer, wait until they are in front of you, that they have gone around the circle past you before you come in behind them. The difference is if they're having a special and you can go into the arena, you can leave money for the person who's carrying the hat or put it on the blanket, and then you enter behind the dancers. And you don't want to go counterclockwise. You always go clockwise if you enter in the circle. If you need to leave the circle, don't turn around and go backwards within the circle. Step outside the circle, walk around past all the chairs. Whatever you have to do, just don't go backwards. That's not a good thing. If someone drops a feather on the ground, do not pick it up. It is for the dancers. Have to wait until a veteran can come and identify whether that is a protected feather, such as an eagle's feather. And in that case, then there's a special ceremony for bringing that feather back. Hopefully you're getting the gist of this. As a volunteer, we're in a Native culture. The whole group is mainly Native. The majority of people are Native. Your expectations, if you're expecting to get your individual needs met, you may be very disappointed. This is not the place that somebody's going to just give you an Indian name. This is not a place where you're going to be adopted into a tribe. There are certain things that we may feel very uncomfortable sharing with someone outside of the culture. We may feel uncomfortable sharing it with someone who is native, but they're not inside the culture. Some of the reasons that we have for doing things have taken place for centuries, for time immemorial. Even the meaning of how come we do it gets lost at times. There are some elders who are really good at explaining things, but if you have questions, try not to ask those questions in the wrong environment. And I don't even know how to help you protect you from that other than to say, write down your questions, ask us privately. You don't have to have everything answered the moment that you have the question. Sometimes you just need to wait and let things soak in. We're kind of a culture, since we're all into listening. Most of our traditions are very oral. Many times you'll have to hear a long story to get at the answer that you want, and you've got to be willing to sit and listen to that story, let it soak in, kind of sit with it. That's what I would call it, sit with it, and see if you can sort out within your heart whatever the meaning of this is. We also at the powwows, and I see this happening more and more, and I'm uncomfortable with it, people videotaping and taking pictures of during some of our sacred songs. So at opening ceremony, which is grand entry, there are certain songs that we're really not supposed to photograph, and we're really not supposed to videotape. We're supposed to listen and let the feeling of the drum and the song hit us. And sometimes the arena director will remind you to take off your hat and to not take pictures at a certain point, but sometimes they forget. And then I, as an elder, I'm looking around me, and even sometimes it's people in our culture who are videotaping and taking pictures. If you go to a pueblo, there are signs all over the place on the pueblo. Please be considerate of religious or dances or whatever, to refrain from using photography. And the reason for that is so many people copying what we do. You see that with groups, that mimic dancers and mimic songs, but they don't actually know what the songs mean. They don't know what the dances mean, and yet they are almost imitating it as a way of taking our culture away from us. And so I just would caution you not to do that. Enjoy the moment, enjoy what you're getting from our culture face to face. Use your ears, your eyes, your smells, your senses, but keep your cell phones in your pocket. You don't need to be using those. There's other avenues that we can do that. Be sure as a volunteer also that you don't take advantage of your position. So again, our dancers, our drum, our guests from out of town, our artist vendors, our food vendors, they look to you as not necessarily their boss, but as very important leaders of this event, for instance, that they're taking place in. They may feel like somehow they're supposed to give you special privileges, and I want to tell you that's the last thing I want my volunteers to do or to take advantage of. We should be humble, and we should be serving everybody that has been providing us the service. Our drum is coming, and they're playing not because they're entertainers. They're playing because they're blessing our event with the prayers of their songs. Our dancers, when they're dancing, they're bringing the spirits of their ancestors to us. So we're here to serve them. They are not here and obligated to take care of us or to gift us in any ways. I just really feel strongly about that. So I never want to see a volunteer taking advantage by accident. I know this isn't something that a person's going to intentionally do, but by accident, when I see someone come up to me and they go, look at these beautiful earrings so-and-so gave me, and I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, they've known you for 2 minutes. How did you get those earrings? Well, it's because they know you're on the committee. They know how hard you work. But those earrings is $40 that, could buy several pounds of flour for their next ceremonies when they go back to their homes. And so I think about that all the time. It really lays on my heart, when anything like that happens. So please think of generosity on your part to other people rather than generosity of them back to you.